In this powerful story, a young boy named Miles takes courage into his own hands when a robbery at a local bank puts lives in danger. What starts as a desperate moment of fear quickly turns into a heroic act of bravery, changing his life and his family's future forever. Stay tuned to see how one act of courage can make all the difference. The city of Riverside was filled with a silent, almost palpable weight of struggle. The streets were cracked and worn, a reflection of the hardship that touched every corner. In this place, dreams often seemed too distant to chase, but for 12-year-old Miles Turner, there was no room for dwelling on what was lost. Survival was his only focus. Miles lived in a small rundown house with his parents, Samuel and Alice Turner. Once, Samuel had been a hardworking construction foreman, the pillar of their family. But after a sudden stroke, Samuel's life changed forever. No longer able to work, he was left weakened and reliant on others, his body betraying him at the worst possible time. His mother, Alice, worked tirelessly at a local diner, often returning home late, her feet aching, yet always putting on a smile for her family. Miles knew better than to mention how exhausted she looked, how the strain was evident in her tired eyes. The unpaid bills piled up on the kitchen counter, and the hushed conversations between his parents at night, which he pretended not to overhear, were filled with worry. He overheard his parents speaking in low voices, their words filled with frustration. They worried about everything: the bills, the lack of work, and the ever-growing uncertainty. Miles knew something had to change, and he was determined to do whatever it took to help. At 12 years old, it was hard for Miles to find work. No one would hire him, not at his age, but he refused to give up. Every day after school, he walked the streets, asking around at local stores, fast food joints, and gas stations. Each time the answer was the same: "You're too young. Try again when you're older." Then one day he noticed a "Help Wanted" sign in the window of the Royal Trust Bank. The towering building, gleaming even under the gray sky, seemed like a world away from Miles's own. Yet something in him told him to try. He walked in, and after a brief exchange with the manager, Mr. Gray, he was given a chance to clean the floors after hours. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Miles worked late into the night, sweeping floors and emptying trash cans. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and every dollar he earned made a difference for his family, alleviating some of his mother's burdens. One evening, as Miles was finishing his shift, the calm atmosphere of the bank suddenly shattered. The door slammed open, and in burst 5 masked men, rifles in hand, moving with a sense of cold determination. Their leader, a towering figure named Jordan King, barked orders, his voice like a whip. "Nobody move! Hands in the air!" King shouted, his voice cutting through the panic. A shot rang out, the sound of it deafening, causing plaster to fall from the ceiling. The room froze in fear. Miles instinctively slipped behind a nearby supply closet, his heart racing. From his hidden spot, Miles watched in terror as the robbers took control. They shoved customers to the floor, dragged bank tellers away, and swiftly disabled the security guards. One of them, a smaller man with a cruel grin, waved his rifle threateningly at an elderly woman, Mrs. Susan Gray, who clutched her purse in fear. "We're not here for your money," Jordan King announced coldly, his voice echoing through the room. "We're after the government bonds in the vault. Anyone who tries to stop us will regret it." Miles, trembling, felt a surge of fear and helplessness. Yet deep down, something in him urged him to act. He couldn't just hide. He had to do something. He thought of the police, of the FBI agents he had seen in the bank the week before. He had to find them. Quietly, he crept from his hiding spot and made his way through the shadows, carefully avoiding the robber's line of sight. His heart pounded in his chest as he reached a small office where he found 2 FBI agents bound and gagged. Miles quickly approached, his hands shaking, and began to untie them. One of the agents, recognizing the boy, whispered urgently, "Call for backup. Get us out of here." Miles nodded and quickly moved to a nearby desk, reaching for the hidden alarm button. The alarm blared loudly, sending the robbers into a frenzy. As they scrambled to regain control, Miles, acting on instinct, knocked over a stack of files, scattering papers everywhere. In the chaos that ensued, the FBI agents surged forward, tackling the robbers to the ground. Miles, exhausted but exhilarated, ducked behind a desk for cover. But his safety was short-lived. Jordan King spotted him, his eyes narrowing with fury. He stormed over, grabbing Miles by the collar and shoving a gun against his forehead. Well, well, what do we have here? King sneered. A little hero trying to make a difference? His grip tightened. Miles fought to keep his voice steady, despite the terror flooding his chest. If you hurt me, the FBI will never let you walk free, he said. For a moment, there was hesitation in King's eyes. Then, just as he was about to pull the trigger, one of the FBI agents managed to take the shot that changed everything. The sound of the shot echoed through the chaos, and in an instant, Jordan King stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder as the gun slipped from his hand. His face twisted in pain and rage. But it was too late. The FBI agent swarmed in, quickly subduing the remaining robbers, handcuffing them with swift precision. Miles stood frozen, his body still trembling from the adrenaline rush. His heart raced in his chest, but for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to breathe. The nightmare was over. One of the FBI agents, a tall man with a stern expression, approached Miles. "You did good, kid," he said, his voice firm but filled with gratitude. "You saved lives today." Miles nodded, still in shock, unable to fully comprehend what had just happened. But before he could say anything, the sounds of sirens grew louder, signaling the arrival of more law enforcement. Amid the flashing lights and the chaos that followed, Mrs. Susan Gray, the elderly woman Miles had seen earlier, slowly approached him. She reached out and took his trembling hands in hers, her voice soft but full of emotion. "You're a hero," she said. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in." Miles felt a lump in his throat, unable to find the words. He had never expected such recognition, especially not from someone like Mrs. Gray, who had been so terrified just moments ago. But as the sirens grew quieter and the officers worked to secure the building, he realized that the true reward wasn't the recognition, but the knowledge that he had done something right. The next morning, as Miles returned to his small home, he was greeted with an unexpected visitor. Richard Green, the owner of Royal Trust Bank, stood at the doorstep, holding a set of papers. "Miles," Richard said with a warm smile, "you've changed everything for your family. I'm here to help." Miles' parents, Samuel and Alice, were in disbelief when Richard handed them the papers. "This is for you," Richard said. "A mortgage-free home. No more struggling." Tears welled up in Alice's eyes, and Samuel, though still weak, smiled at the thought of a better future. "And that's not all," Richard continued. "Miles has also earned a scholarship to college. I'm proud of what you've done, son." Miles could barely believe what he was hearing. It felt surreal. The boy who once struggled to help his family now had a future filled with hope. As the day came to an end, Miles sat on the steps of his new home, gazing out at the setting sun. For the first time in a long while, he felt something he hadn't in years: hope. The struggle was far from over, but now there was a sense of possibility. His quiet courage had changed everything. Days passed, and life slowly returned to normal for Miles and his family. The new house was a constant reminder of their transformed lives. No longer did his mother, Alice, have to work endless shifts at the diner, her back aching every night from the long hours. Instead, Alice found work at a local library, a job that gave her time to rest and a sense of pride. Samuel, though still recovering from his illness, could now focus on his health without the constant stress of finances hanging over him. As for Miles, his scholarship was the key to a new world. He enrolled at a prestigious local college where he excelled in his studies. The weight of his past struggles seemed distant now, overshadowed by his ambition and new sense of purpose. Every so often, Richard Green would stop by the family's new home, checking in on their progress. He always brought encouragement and wisdom, reminding Miles that hard work and courage could change the world. But it wasn't just Richard who had noticed the change in Miles. The community began to recognize the quiet hero who had risked his life to protect others. People approached him in the street, offering thanks and admiration. Yet despite all the praise and admiration, Miles remained humble. He didn't seek recognition. To him, the reward was knowing that he had made a difference, that he had done something right when the world needed it most. One afternoon, while walking home from class, Miles ran into Mrs. Susan Gray once again. She was sitting on a bench in the park, a warm smile on her face as she waved at him. "I knew you'd make something of yourself," she said, her eyes sparkling with pride. You're destined for great things, Miles. You've already changed so many lives. Miles smiled, his chest swelling with emotion. He sat beside her on the bench, and they chatted for a while, talking about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. For the first time, Miles felt like he was truly walking into a brighter future. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Miles stood up, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He knew that the road wouldn't always be easy, but with the support of his family and the lessons he had learned along the way, he felt ready to face the world. "Thank you for everything, Mrs. Gray," Miles said as he prepared to leave. "I never would have gotten here without you." Mrs. Gray smiled again, her eyes twinkling with affection. "You were always destined for greatness, Miles. Remember that." Time passed quickly, and before long, Miles was well into his second semester of college. He had become a familiar face on campus, known not just for his academic achievements, but for his quiet strength and determination. His professors admired his work ethic, and his classmates respected him for his humble nature. Miles didn't seek out the spotlight, but somehow it seemed to find him. One day while Miles was heading to class, he received an unexpected phone call. The caller ID showed Richard Green. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly answered. "Miles, I hope I'm not interrupting." Richard's voice came through, calm and reassuring. "I wanted to let you know that we're hosting a community event at the bank next week. I'd like you to be there and share your story. Your bravery deserves to be heard." Miles hesitated for a moment. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not in front of a large crowd, but he remembered the lessons he learned and the courage it had taken to act in the first place. "I'm not sure if I'm the right person for that," Miles replied, his voice uncertain. "I just did what anyone would do." "That's exactly why you're the right person, Miles," Richard said warmly. "Because you didn't seek the limelight. You acted because it was the right thing to do, and that's what makes your story so powerful." After a brief pause, Miles agreed. "Okay, I'll be there. I'll share my story." The day of the event arrived, and Miles found himself standing in front of a crowd at the bank, a microphone in hand. His heart raced as he looked out at the people gathered before him, some familiar faces from the community, others he had never met. Miles cleared his throat, trying to calm his nerves. He hadn't planned to speak at length, but as the words began to flow, he found himself telling his story, the struggles of his family, the long hours his mother worked, the pain of seeing his father suffer. He spoke about the fear he felt during the robbery and how, despite everything, he couldn't just stand by. He talked about the moment he decided to act, the confusion, the fear, but also the determination that pushed him forward. As he spoke, Miles could see the faces of the people in the audience change. Some were moved to tears, others were nodding in quiet respect. And for the first time, Miles felt like his story mattered. When he finished, there was a moment of silence before the crowd erupted into applause. Miles stood still, his heart full, his mind racing. It wasn't the praise that mattered to him, but the fact that he had shared something real, something that had come from his heart. Richard Green approached Miles after the event, clapping him on the back. "I knew you had it in you," he said, smiling. "You've inspired a lot of people today." Miles nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thank you, Mr. Green, but the real inspiration comes from my family and everyone who believed in me."